People do it every year. Some people do it in a single day, and a very, very small, very committed group does it, and then they turn back around and they do it again in reverse. Hi, I'm Katie Staples, your adventure podcast hostess with the mostest. Today, we're talking about the ultimate Grand Canyon challenge, the Rim to Rim Trail, the Rim to River and back in a single day, and the full Rim to Rim to Rim Trail. A few weeks ago, I released an episode about hiking below the rim of the Grand Canyon. And since then, the common question I've gotten is how far can you actually go down? These are really the three versions of this hike, and understanding the difference changes everything. So, first is the rim to river and back up to the rim again. This is the one that tricks people the most. You hike down to the Colorado River and back up in the same day. It looks reasonable on paper, and newsflash, it's not. You're looking at 14 to 18 miles and several thousand feet of elevation change. It's often the first time people realize the canyon is not a normal hiking environment. Then there is the Rim to Rim Trail. This is the classic bucket list hike. You start on one of the rims, either south or north, and you end on the other. Now, going from the south rim to the north rim is the most common direction. You're looking at 21 to 24 miles long and somewhere around 10,000 feet of total elevation change when you combine the descent and the ascent. Then, there is the Rim to Rim Trail. This is where things stop being a hike and they start being an endurance event with scenery. You go from one rim to another and then you turn around and do it again. It ends up being anywhere between 48 and 42 miles with over 10,000 feet of climbing. Most finish somewhere between 16 and 24 total hours of hiking. And believe me, at hour 18, the canyon stops feeling like a bucket list item and it starts feeling like a very long conversation with your own decision making. Now, here's the part most people don't expect. The Grand Canyon is not hard because of one thing. It's hard because it slowly reprograms your sense of effort. The emotional curve of rim to rim looks something like this. At the top, you feel great. This is adventure. This is what you trained for. On the descent, you feel unstoppable. Everything is easy. Every step feels like progress. And at the river, you feel like you've done the hard part. This is where most people get mentally tricked. This is where you would start to fail. When you reach the river, you sit down, you eat something, you cool off, and your brain tells you the hardest part is over. That's the trap. Because nothing at the bottom of the canyon feels like danger in that moment. And this is where people mentally relax, hydrate poorly, underfuel, and underestimate what it's going to feel like to climb out in the heat that's about to get worse, not better. Because what comes next is not just the reverse of what you just did. It's a completely different experience. The climb out is not just physical effort, it's negotiation. It's problem solving. It's your brain trying to reframe what you signed up for. And doing the rim to rim to rim, that process resets on the other side and then repeats it as you turn around. One of the most common questions is, can the average person do this? The honest answer is yes, and not by accident. A reasonably fit hiker who trains consistently and builds endurance and respects the environment can absolutely complete the rim to rim, or even the rim to river to rim and back in one day. That's within reach for a lot of people. The people who struggle aren't necessarily the least athletic, it's the ones that are the least prepared for that specific environment. So a useful benchmark is this. If you can comfortably hike 15 to 20 miles in a day with significant elevation change and you can recover well, you're getting to rim territory. If hiking 15 to 20 miles in a day sounds really far away for you, that's not a disqualifier. It's just your starting point. It is possible for you to train up to get to that point. Now let's talk direction, north to south, south to north, because this matters more than people realize. A lot of hikers prefer traveling from the south rim to the north rim. The South Kaibab Trail is the most direct and scenic route down, yet here's the catch. It has no water, not a single refill point. Once you start, you are fully committed. The Bright Angel Trail from the South Rim is much more forgiving. It has shade, it has rest stops, and historically, there's water sources along the way. Logistically, people either plan well or they immediately regret not planning well. If you're hiking rim to rim, you end up on a different rim than when you started. So, how do you get back? Well, option one is the simplest, have two cars, leave one on each side. Option two is the shuttle services, which most people use. You park on one rim and you get transported to the other and you hike back to your vehicle. Option three is convincing a friend to drive you several hours through Arizona for reasons they will question later. And option four is do the rim to rim to rim, which solves the problem by simply refusing to stop hiking. Now, let's address timing because this one is one of the most underestimated parts of the entire experience. If you're doing rim to rim in a single day, most hikers start between 4 and 6 in the morning. Not because they're hardcore, they're aiming to finish the most physically demanding part of the hike before the canyon turns into an oven. And don't forget your permits and reservations. This is where I'm going to say something that sounds complicated, yet is actually simple. If you're doing rim to rim or rim to river and back up in a single day, you generally do not need a permit. If you are spending the night below the rim, you absolutely do. Now, here's where people get stuck. Phantom Ranch. Phantom Ranch is the only lodging at the bottom of the canyon, and getting a reservation there feels less like booking a hotel and more like entering a lottery designed by someone who dislikes availability. So, what happens if you can't get Phantom Ranch? You don't cancel the hike, you just adjust. The realistic backup plan is Bright Angel Campground or Cottonwood Campground, depending on your direction. You still get the full canyon experience, just without the historic cabin with lemonade at the bottom version of it. And yes, that lemonade is real. And yes, people talk about it like it's part of the achievement. Now let's talk water. So that might be the most important part of this entire journey. Again, the South Kaibab Trail has no water, none. You are fully self-contained from the rim to the river there. At the bottom, water is typically available near Phantom Ranch and Bright Angel Campground. On North Kaibab and Bright Angel corridors, the water availability exists at several points, yet the reality is it changes. Pipelines break, maintenance happens, seasons shift, systems go offline. So instead of memorizing a perfect map, the rule is simple. Never assume water will be available. Always verify before you go and always carry a backup plan. That sounds dramatic until you realize that most Grand Canyon rescues are not dramatic falls. They're heat exhaustion, dehydration, and people simply running out of energy in a place that doesn't forgive that mistake. The park sees hundreds of search and rescue incidents every year and roughly 250 to 300 rescues annually. There's no public rim to rim rescue number. However, most incidents involve day hikers and below rim travel where heat and fatigue catch people off guard. In June 2026, an 18-year-old hiker was attempting a rim to river and back day hike on Bright Angel Trail, which is something that thousands of people attempt every year. The total distance is about 15 miles, and the conditions hit at exactly the wrong time of day, the hardest part of the canyon when temperatures can become extreme at lower elevations. During the hike, the hiker began slowly showing signs of heat-related illness, the kind that starts suddenly and then escalates quickly in that environment. Rangers responded, yet by the time the situation reached that point, the body was no longer able to recover. It's 15 miles. It's not all that extreme. It's what people think are safe oftentimes. There was no technical mistake involved, no fall, no dramatic accident, just prolonged exertion in extreme heat combined with a system that couldn't cool itself fast enough in a place that offers very little margin for error. Earlier in May of 2025, on the North Kaibab Trail, during a rim to rim attempt, a 74-year-old experienced hiker from Washington State was found unresponsive about a half mile below the rim trailhead. Half mile below the rim. That detail is important because it challenges one of the biggest assumptions that people make about this hike, which is that the hardest part is over once you're almost out. Yet the final stretch of the North Kaibab is still steep, exposed, and physically demanding, especially after hours of cumulative fatigue, elevation gain, and energy depletion. In this case, the hiker was very close to finishing the ascent, yet the body was already past its ability to recover and continue. What connects both of these situations isn't age or experience or fitness level, it's the environment. Hours of exertion, heat exposure, and gradual energy depletion don't usually create one sudden failure point. They create a slow breakdown in performance and decision making until the body simply can't maintain forward movement anymore. And that's not the part most people misunderstand about the rim to rim hike. It's not usually cliffs or dramatic mistakes that cause problems. It's the combination of, I feel okay, so I must be okay. And I'm close, I can push through in an environment where those assumptions stop being reliable far earlier than people expect. So, what does heat illness actually look like? In real time, it's very subtle. You stop sweating normally, you get dizzy or confused, you start making small decisions that don't make sense. And the most dangerous part is you often don't realize it's happening until someone else points it out. That's why the canyon is so unforgiving. It doesn't announce failure, it just quietly accelerates it. So let's talk about why most people fail outside of the heat exertion and things like that. It's almost never one big mistake, it's just a series of small ones. They start out too late in the day. They move too fast on the descent. They don't eat enough. They underestimate electrolytes. They assume that flat hiking translates directly to this environment. And then suddenly, around mile 18 or 25 or even 35, depending on the route, everything feels different. The canyon itself doesn't get harder. You just stop being able to ignore it. So, how do you train for something like this if you don't live near a canyon? You train for time on your feet, long hikes, stairmaster sessions that make you question your choices, stadium stairs if you have them nearby, weighted pack heights so that your body learns what fatigue feels like before it matters. And one of the most important pieces is training when you're tired. Because the canyon is not going to ask you how fresh you feel. It's just going to allow you to carry on past feeling tired, past feeling exhausted, past feeling sleep deprived. Now, gear, don't ignore this part. I'm going to keep this simple. First, trekking poles. They save your knees and your ego. A headlamp, because your timing will either be perfect or not, and you have no idea if you're actually going to be able to make it up before the sun goes down. Electrolytes, because water alone is not the strategy, and a water filtration system as a backup, not because you're going to expect to need it, yet the canyon rewards people who plan for the unexpected. That's it. You don't need a 40-item gear list. You just need the things that keep you moving when your body stops negotiating politely. Now, a quick yet important update on the North Kaibab corridor. In 2025, the Dragon Bravo fire significantly impacted the North Rim region, including damage to infrastructure and long-term changes in access and services. Since then, the park has been in ongoing recovery and phased restoration. Here's what matters for hikers. Conditions on the North Rim and the North Kaibab Trail are not something you should assume are identical year to year. Some seasons will have full access and some will have partial restrictions. Some will involve reroutes or limited services. So instead of trying to memorize a perfect current map, check current National Park Service conditions right before your trip. Not months before, right before, because the canyon does not care about your itinerary. So, long story short, is rim to rim worth it? Well, for most people who complete it, the answer is totally yes. Not because it's comfortable or easy, because it's one of those rare experiences that forces you to meet a version of yourself you don't normally see. Somewhere in the middle of that canyon, there's a moment where every hiker gets to decide whether they're just visiting or they're finishing. Next year, I'm planning to attempt the rim to rim and back again myself. 45 miles, over 10,000 feet of climbing, 2 to 3 very long days. And if everything goes according to plan, I'll bring you along for every mile, especially the ones where everything feels like a very questionable idea. If you're thinking about your own rim to rim hike, hopefully this gives you a clear picture of what it actually takes, not just to start it, to finish it safely. Because once you've stood on the rim and you've looked across, the only real question isn't whether it's possible, it's whether you're willing to find out what it feels like when the canyon stops being something you're looking at and starts being something you're inside of. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe because we still have more Grand Canyon content coming. And if you've hiked below the rim before, let us know in the comments how far you went and what surprised you the most about the experience. And I'll see you next time on The Great Escape.